Okay, so we've already set up our estimation, and we want to classify our block model. So before we move on to the classification, which the settings are still here in the same panel where the estimation settings were, we're going to create two more ellipsoids. There we go. So now we can see all three of our ellipsoids. My wireframe one is my ellipsoid for estimating the blocks, and I have a measured ellipsoid here in red and a yellow one. Now, how did I choose 25 meters? For this particular model, I'm going to go and view our composites. And I'll take off the block model, I'll take off the ellipsoids for now. And I wanted to find a spot where I might have distances here. So let's click. Distance between here and here is 25, 30, 30. So maybe I won't get any measured in this one. As well as here, we'll look, this one is 21, 40, 45. So trying to minimize the amount of measured. I might have to move up my first ellipsoid to get anything into the measured category, but that's not a problem. I wanted to try to have 3 drill holes minimum for my measured category. Okay, so now that I have my ellipsoids made, we're going to go and set up the classification parameters. Okay, I'm going to reopen my block model menu by clicking B, and I'm going to go into the estimation here and go to classification settings. In the classification settings, we have 4 tabs. Method is the first tab. So we can, again, use a user-defined script. That's outside the scope of this particular video, but it provides the ultimate in customization. We can use a classical, measured, indicated, and inferred evaluation based on the indicated ellipsoid size and a number multiplier relative to the measured size. So this one's default by 2. So we have one measured ellipsoid, and the indicated is twice as large. We could use classical by ellipsoid, which we'll define an ellipsoid for each class, and we defined 2 already, and the previous lecture was the measured and an indicated ellipsoid. Or we can go by filling ellipsoid using an algorithm centered on the composites, which is a very interesting one. This one is again outside of this particular video, but helps eliminate the spotted dog effect, and it's highly recommended to play around with this setting. So I'm going to choose classical by ellipsoid, and I will go to search. Okay, composite set, copper comp. Pass 1 is going to be measured, and I'm going to add a second pass. Pass 2 is going to be indicated. My pass 1, which was measured, I will select my measured, okay, ellipsoid, and my pass 2, I will select my indicated ellipsoid, okay. And I have not added a pass 3 for the rest. I am going to leave that for now. So we could use a variable ellipsoid, as I mentioned earlier, but that we don't have any folding, and that's outside of the scope of this project. Ellipsoid parameters, okay, very important. The minimum composites per block. So we want a minimum of 3 because not for this one. Sorry, this is for pass 1. For pass 1, I want a minimum of 3. The maximum composites per block, I'm going to set to 999. I don't have a particular maximum, but I am going to limit the number of composites per drill hole to 1. In that way, I ensure that I have 3 drill holes. I need at least 3 composites, but only 1 can come from a certain drill hole. Continue to use regular search. Do I want my blocks limited by an envelope? No, that's already been done. Do I want my composite screening envelope? No, that's already been done when I created the block model. And here is the class index. Measured is 3, indicated is 2, inferred is 1, unclassified is 0. And that's good. We're going to just be aware that those are the index numbers. And I'm going to go back to my search. We'll go to pass 2. Number of composites per block. Okay, so now we didn't need to have 3 anymore. Maybe we can set this to 2. 999 and limit that. All right, so we only need 2 drill holes now, and we're going to click OK. Go back, and we are going to classify. Click OK. Here's our block model. Let's double click on it, and the classification, we have 2. All right, over here we have a classification of 0. It's unclassified. So we're coming to a small problem, is that we can't visualize very easily our classification of the blocks. So we're going to set up a search table to classify these blocks. Okay, we want to create a variable for classification so we can create the classification table to visualize the classification of each block. So to create a variable, we go into Option, Schema, and Colors. We click Add for a new variable. We're going to call it Classification. And we're going to write it in the exact same case that is in the block model with capital C. Click OK. We're going to change the variable type to calculated. And we're going to accept all of these values and click OK. Now we've created the classification variable, we can go back in and find our search table. We can make a new one, we can title it classification, and we can use our variable classification, and we're going to add 3 different search criteria. Now you notice on the top it says range, and then it has a bracket minimum and then maximum bracket. So the minimum value it will accept as equal to, but it has to be less than the maximum. So if you recall, we had indicated and measured being 2 and 3, and we had our inferred being 1. So we'll set the minimum to 1 and 1.1 and apply a color for our inferred. And our inferred will give it a light blue. Our indicated was 2, and we will set the maximum above 2, which just means it's 2. It's going to find all those indicated, and we're going to give it a yellowish color. And our measured was 3, and something above 3 we'll put in there, and we're going to give it red for measured. And now we've created our search table to show us our classification, and we'll click OK. And you can see now that we have gray, which is unclassified. If we double click on one of those blocks, classification 0, unclassified. We have yellow for classification 2, and we didn't have any red for measured, and we don't have any blue for inferred. Now, if you recall, I didn't populate inferred in the classification. I had ellipsoid for measured and indicated. I did this on purpose because I'm going to use an algorithm to populate the rest of the blocks instead of an ellipsoid, which may speed things up on a larger block model. So now we're going to do that. So we'll go back to our block model list. Okay. And we have our block model, and we can do an operation on it. And we're going to set a variable value. So we'll go into that, and we want to set the value to 1, inferred. For which variable on the field? Well, we want to do it for our classification variable. And our constraint is the classification, so we type that in. And currently the classifications that equal 0, those are the ones we want to change to 1. Click OK. And it has now populated all of those. So The next thing I want to do is I want to have some measured blocks. So I am going to readjust my original ellipsoid. And now remember, we took some measurements earlier, and I figured 25, 25, 25 may actually be just a little bit too small to get any measured. I wanted to get 3 drill holes for each measured. So I'm going to switch this now to 30, 30, 30. And that should be sufficient to get us at least a few blocks into the measured category. So we're going to go back into our block menu here by pressing B on the keyboard. We're going to go highlight this, and we're going to go back into the estimation, and we have classification settings. Now our settings haven't changed. We could clear this entire classification. But if we clear the entire classification, then all of those inferred blocks are not going to get reclassified. What I'm going to do is classify on top of what we already have, and it should just reclassify the blocks that are now measured. So I'll do that now. Click OK, and voila, we have a couple of blocks here now in the red, and they are measured. They can reach 3 drill holes based on our 30, 30, 30 ellipsoid. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the block menu again, and I want to show one last thing. We have an advanced settings button here, and the advanced settings lets you change the mode of the estimation setting. We could either estimate in RAM, which is very fast comparatively, or we can estimate on disk. If your computer system does not have sufficient RAM to estimate a very, very large block model, we're talking well over millions of blocks, then you can estimate it on disk, and it will estimate it just at the expense of time.